Now, if you're practicing handstands, ideally you'd kick up and you'd hold every time. Now, obviously we need handstand balance to be able to do that, but a lot of people are failing the handstands because of the inconsistency or the wrong setup and execution of the kick up itself. So today I'm going to go through the very common issues with the kick up and how to fix them. Number one, we need to look at consistency. So what I recommend you do is you video yourself from the side, do 5 kick up attempts to handstand, video the 5 and see what you're doing. And the first thing I want you to look at is the consistency. Are you doing the same technique every time? Whether it's the same entry, are you entering like this? Are you putting your hands down the same distance? Are your shoulders your focal point and the way you're kicking up the same, or are you mixing it up every time? And that becomes the first issue. If you're changing it every time, you don't have a base to work with. You can't slowly change one thing or fine tune the position, and you're reacting. So what I mean by reacting is you do one kick up and say you under kick. So the next kick up, you run in that direction and over kick, and then you're probably ending up walking or actually falling over towards overbalance. And if you do the opposite and you go over too much on the first kick up and you go over, then the second one, you probably tend to under kick. So you're reacting. And it's fine to do that, but we need to move one thing at a time. So change one thing very, very slightly, keeping everything else exactly the same. But what you tend to do is you change 5 things at once. So you'll suddenly go too far this way or suddenly too far that way by a massive amount. And then the next one just keeps reacting to the last one. So consistency is key. If you're serious about learning to handstand in 2026, check out my handstand course. Links are down in the description, or you can take a picture of this QR code. And what I actually recommend you do is you do it to an extreme in terms of the consistency. So I would place the hand down exactly the same every time in terms of the distance between the hands, and then whether the hands are externally rotated, internally rotated, or straight ahead, I would keep those things exactly the same. And I would highly recommend, if you're newer to handstands, you're not quite sure where to put your hands, I would go a little bit wider than shoulder width and slightly turned out. This just creates a little bit more space, demands less flexibility, and just creates a stronger position. This compared to this. Then we want to be looking from the side and look at the shoulder position relevant to the base. So the base being the hands. Ideally, the shoulders should be more or less on top of the hands. If we start back here when we kick up, that means we have to go forwards into the movement. We don't want actually to have a forwards movement. We want to have an up movement on top of the base. So already positioning the shoulders directly on top, keeping them on top when we kick, is going to create much more stability and consistency of the position. The next thing we need to look at, if we've got the shoulders in place, the hands in place, we want to look at where we're looking, the focal point. So if I put my fingers down here on this line, I'm going to actually have the shoulders on top, and then the focal point is going to be directly on the line as well. So my focal point is in line with my index finger. So slightly in front, like so, and then when I kick, those things stay exactly the same. And then the only other thing I need to worry about is the power of the kick up. And I can slowly fine tune that because I'm keeping those other things exactly the same. Shoulders on top, focal point the same. Slowly kick higher and higher until I get on top of the base and then come back down again. You can see how that's very, very consistent. But if I notice when I video from the side that my shoulders are going forwards or back, my focal point is different every time, I can just fix that thing because it stands out, because everything else is staying exactly the same. Now notice everything I've shown so far has been freestanding. If you don't have a freestanding handstand, if you can't hold here for 5 to 10 seconds every time, you probably shouldn't be practicing your kick up in the middle of the room as your main training repetitions. And even if you do have a freestanding handstand, it's worth kicking up close-ish to the wall when you're working on technique and consistency, because we can use it in a way to police the things we just spoke about. So if I'm placing my hands down nice and close to the wall, I've got that fixed focal position, that fixed shoulder position, but I kick and hold freestanding, it's going to police me. If I go too far over, I'm going to hit the wall. So if I'm still working on consistency, but I have a freestanding, working super close to the wall like this can work really well to catch and encourage that up position that we're aiming for. But if you are newer to the kick up, if you're newer to handstands, we can use it as a way of slowly increasing the progressions of the kick up. So I'm still going to have exactly that same setup, the hands, the shoulder position, the focal point. But now when I kick up, I'm just going to kiss lightly to the wall with one foot. This is great for beginners who are learning and building confidence with their kick up. And then as we get stronger with it, we just increase the height of the kick until the second leg can get all the way up top. Now, once we have that, we do exactly the same, but instead of going 1, 2 on the wall, we can try and get both heels to touch at the same time. And then once we have that, we can try and kick, catch just before the wall, and then touch very lightly. Now, those things should help you identify where your challenges or where your gaps are on your current kick up, and then how to fix them. The other big thing is making sure that you're increasing your window of balance. Your window of balance is how much room you have for error when you kick up. So look at me, if I kick up here, I can kick here and still catch the handstand. I can kick here and still catch the handstand, look. So I can go between this position and this position. My window of catch is very, very big. But when you're starting, your window of catch is like a knife edge. So even if you're kicking up here, you're not actually able to catch. It needs to be dead perfect. And then you only catch for a second and you fall. And what that's telling you is you need to work on your window of balance. You need to work the back to wall, the chest to wall drills to slowly increase that range. My handstand balance course takes you from the complete beginner learning to kick up, teaches you how to increase that range of motion or that catch position, that window of balance, how to get that first 10-second hold to the 60-second hold, to do shapes and progressions all the way through to a one-arm handstand. Links are down in the description, or you can click on the QR code. Now, if you get sore wrists or hands while doing handstands or handstand training like handstand push-ups or press handstands or anything in between, then this video is for you. Now, I'm 50 years old and I've been teaching calisthenics and handstands for over 10 years now. I was 37 when I started to learn to handstand. I could do an 8 to 10 second wobbly handstand, but I couldn't press, I couldn't handstand push-up, and I learned those things as an adult. And I can do all those things, plus I can take my body weight, so just under 80 kilos, onto one hand and balance. So I've got all that weight now on that one hand, and my wrist and hand doesn't hurt. And to get to this level, I've been doing daily handstand practice for 10 plus years. But one of the most common questions I get asked is, how do I stop my wrists from hurting when practicing handstands? And here's an interesting one, check this out. Look, I can't straighten, or I can't get 90 degrees in the wrist there when I do that. And that's after practicing handstands for 10 plus years every day. So don't think you need to be able to do that mobility-wise at the wrist to be able to hold a handstand without it hurting. Now, one of the most common reasons why the wrists, the hands, the forearms, the elbows, the shoulders all don't like you when you handstand is it because when you're learning, your handstand doesn't look like this. It looks like this. And you can see the amount of movement that I'm doing here. When I go into my practice, it's like this. It's like doing this all the time and wondering why your calves, your ankles, and your feet don't like you the next day. But as you become stronger and cleaner at your handstand, there's hardly any movement in the wrists, elbows, forearms when you're holding a static position. So straight away, that's less demanding on the joints, on the muscles, on the connective tissue when holding a handstand position. And if your handstand drills and exercises and attempts look like I just showed, then it's probably a sign that you need to back off to easier progressions and make sure your technique is cleaner and you're working reps and sets. Don't put as much stress on the body when doing it. Number 2, we need to check our overall head to toe mobility. What we often think about when we're trying to prep the wrists for handstands is that we do all the great handstand warm-up exercises, and these are great, so doing circles, doing peels up and down, putting the forearms together, interlacing the fingers, doing the circles, but this is specifically for the wrist. And one of the things that can happen is, if I don't have the mobility in the rest of the body, I'll compensate in the base, and the base being the hand and the wrist. So if I struggle to take my hands above my head, and when I do, I look like this. When I try and stack this, it's like trying to hold this position. When I stand on my feet or in a squat position, you can see now the ankles and the knees are not going to like me. But if I work on my hip mobility, suddenly I'm in a stronger, exactly the same when I'm on my hands. I need to work up the chain, make sure the rest of the body is in a good position, and I'm not compensating in the wrists and the ankles. So doing your passive hanging, doing your thoracic extension, making sure that you have enough mobility here so you can take the arms above your head without bending the elbows or loading the wrists too much. Make sure you're doing this as part of your daily practice, opening up the upper body. Also make sure that your lower body isn't like this and you walk around like a duck. Make sure that you can open here. So see, I can get right up against the wall in this position. I can have a straight line from my knee to my shoulder. And then my hamstrings are nice and long as well. So there's less and less compensation in the rest of the body. You also want to make some space. So if I go into a handstand and I place the hands down like this, and then I kick up and I look like this, because my hands aren't wide enough, because I think that a closer hand position is better, then I'm going to put more and more load on the wrists. Create a bit more space, go into some external rotation, go a little bit wider. This is going to be better for most people than this. And also think about your energy when you go into a handstand. So when you kick up or jump or press or whatever you're doing, if you send that energy forwards and backwards. So if I do a kick up like this, I'm having to put the brakes on. I'm putting energy in this direction and having to go back in the opposite direction. Number one, it's harder to catch. It's less consistent. But number two, it's just harder on the joints and I have to do a change of direction that goes into the wrist. If I do this instead, place the hands down on the floor, make a strong focal point, shoulders on top, and then I enter the handstand, see how that's a lot less intensity on the joints, on the wrists. And then also check what you're doing for the rest of the day in terms of the wrists, the forearm, the elbow, the posture. If you're holding your baby like this all the time and we've got flexion and we're closed at the shoulder, rounded at the upper back, and then we try and put our hands above our head into that position, or I'm sitting at my desk like this, or I'm on my phone like this, I'm going to need a little bit more warm up. I'm going to have to increase that hanging. I'm going to have to increase that foam roller work. And I'm going to need to take a little bit more time to warm up before I go into my handstand practice. So as best you can, try and minimize those things during the day that's going to help you out and get you into a better position when you go to practice. And if you are putting lots and lots of volume into your handstand training, I'd actually recommend that you also use P-bars and handstand blocks just to mix up the position and give your hands a little bit of an out. Putting your hands flat on the floor like that needs more mobility than putting your hands like this and allowing some flexion to come in. And it's also just going to put different stresses on the body, so it's going to share it. Exactly the same here on the P-bar. Now I'm in external rotation that creates more space. And I'm also got more of a neutral wrist position. So if I handstand on that compared to that, it's going to be different and less aggressive on the wrist for most people. So mixing it up is really good, especially if you're doing lots and lots of volume. And these are great if you're working towards one arm handstand. Also be realistic on the rest of your body. How much load is your body under? Make sure you're getting enough sleep, hydration, good nutrition, magnesium, vitamin C, fish oil, or whatever works for you in reducing inflammation is going to help for overall body recovery in general, let alone just your handstand practice. Now, when training towards a skill like a freestanding handstand, it's a bit complicated to know when you're ready for the next level in terms of the drills, the progressions. Everyone is going to start on a slightly different progression to start with. You might be already trying to kick up to a freestanding handstand, or you might just slowly be conditioning your hands and shoulders in the middle of the room, feet on the couch or up, starting to go towards chest to wall positions. And then we'd normally progress to doing kick-ups to the wall. We'd learn to pull on and off the wall, all still while maintaining and improving our conditioning holds, building up until we can hold for 30 to 60 seconds against the wall. Then we'll be starting to increase and understand our window of balance, how we control the overbalance and the underbalance. Then we tend to move away from the wall initially for some standard kick-up attempts to a straightish handstand. Then we would slowly add in shapes. At that point, we'll probably also start to include some strength work towards some skills like press handstands or handstand push-ups. Again, normally that would be the lower levels of that, like the pike push-ups, wall eccentrics. So we would have started to build a handstand program or practice that's much more evolved. And then we might keep taking that all the way to some extreme skills like a one-arm handstand. But along that journey, even if you have a very good program, how do you know when you're ready to take that next step, that next progression? And remember, it's not just handstand balance we're talking about, it's the mobility as well. The mobility is going to affect your ability to get in and out of some of these positions and is going to affect the drills that you use. So it's super important to know regressions and progressions of the actual skill. So if you're having an off day, you can back off and still do the reps, but you just make things easier. That could be taking a freestanding movement like a straddle handstand and doing it up against the wall. But the day where your balance is really good, we can embrace it and even go to harder levels that might be something like transitions in and out of the straddle position. So having an understanding of the progression line is super important. So when do we know when to take it up to that next level or that next progression towards the skill? So if you're following a program or a routine, if you can do it 80 to 100% of the time, you're probably ready to start playing with some of those next progressions or next drills. So if you're doing something like a freestanding handstand and you can kick up 8 out of 10 times, show control and catch and come back down again, and then your hold times are 30 seconds plus, we can probably start to add in different shapes. Now, I just entered the shape via a straight position, so I've gone into a straddle from a straight, so I'd learn how to hold this straddle position. Ideally, when I'm doing this, I'm gonna return back to my straight before I come back out. But I'm still just doing static holds. So a static hold in the straddle position, but the goal is to enter it from the straight position. And that could be a progression from just the standard straight holds. And I would do that with both the straddle position and the tuck. So exactly the same. I kick up to my handstand, show control, and then come down to my tuck position, hold for time, and then return back to my straight position. Now already, that's probably gonna be too hard for a lot of people if they haven't been doing any straddle or tuck work. So we need to do an easier regression. So while I was working on those straight freestanding holds to get that 80% consistency of kick-ups and increasing those freestanding holds, I should also have been working on my straddle and tuck positions against the wall. So again, I'm starting in the straight position. I'm gonna open to my straddle, light butt touch in that position, hold, and then return with a little butt bounce back to the open hip straight position. So I'm using the wall as assistance to make sure that I'm building the ability to understand the straddle position. I could do the same for the tuck. And I'm starting and finishing in that straight position, which is gonna get me ready to do this freestanding version. And just like starting to work the straddle and tuck up against the wall while we're also working on the freestanding holds, our practice should also be including the mobility work to get us ready for those next stages. So doing our straddle movements, our forward folds, our hanging, and all the movements that are gonna help us towards our handstand skills are being slowly conditioned and increased from those earlier stages of our handstand practice. So when we need to have the mobility to do the advanced skills, we have it ready to go. Now with the strength skills like handstand push-ups and press handstands, it's a little bit easier to do the repetitions. And I recently made a video on the 5 rep rule. So if you can do 5 reps really nicely, you're ready to start playing with that next progression, but you might not be ready to use it in a working set. So if I take something like a pike push-up and I can bang out repetitions here, 5 to 10, then I know that I can up it and make it harder. Can I get 5 reps at that next progression? If I can start to do the next one. But if the next one, I can only get 1 terrible rep out, then I know I'm not ready to do that for my main working sets. But I'm starting to play and understand the next progressions. The same with the press handstand. If I have eccentric presses in my program and I'm coming down slowly, but when I get to this point, I fall out of the movement, that's not going to count as a full range of motion, good repetition. So I need to take it over to the wall and do a good eccentric repetition that goes all the way down to the floor. But I know that next progression for when I'm ready or when I'm having one of those good days. So having good programs is fantastic and having the exercises laid out in front of you, but you need to make sure that you're working the correct progressions for your current level. And that level does change day to day. So you need to know that progression line, what are the next exercises and what are the exercises that are slightly easier, so you can keep moving back and forth as you increase down that pathway towards your final goal. If you need more help with the programming side, I have my new courses. The handstand balance one is going to take you from the wall drills all the way through to a one-arm handstand. The handstand push-up one is going to take you from a pike push-up all the way through to a freestanding handstand push-up and then a 90-degree handstand push-up. The same for the press handstand course, from those initial floor and wall drills all the way to a freestanding press handstand and then a stool to press. If you're interested, take a picture of the QR codes, or the details are down below in the description. It doesn't matter if you can already handstand or if you're working towards a handstand, have an ability to hold in this position and go to here and back again is crucial for getting consistent holds, being able to do press handstands. Look, it's the same position. I'm over here with my head and shoulders, but my feet can stay over in this position. So I'm hanging more towards that underbalance. And if you've been following me for a while, or you do any of my courses, you know that this drill, the toe pull drill, is essential for building that strength. First, we work the position, getting comfortable with taking the shoulders past the hands, that pulls the toes and the hips off the wall slightly. Then we get better at repetitions, pushing up to handstand and going back. And then eventually we can hold in this position and move easily between underbalance and the handstand. And then when we enter the handstand, if we think about going up and down this side of the handstand, not up and over, most people will kick like this, which is great when you go into the wall, but not great when you're freestanding. But if I place my hands down on the floor first, set the shoulders, kick the hips and the feet up this side of my handstand, I'm going to catch more often because I'm going up to handstand. And you can still make it look super clean, but it means that everything's stacking instead of everything going over this way and then you're fighting. And today, let's take this to an extreme and start moving the shoulders really far forwards as we lower the body and just see how low we can go and go towards things like planches. To start with, let's do a test and see how good we are in the position. So I'm going to externally rotate the hands a little bit more than I would do in a normal handstand. I'm going to pull from the wall, and then I'm going to take the shoulders forwards to counterbalance the feet going in the opposite direction. See how far you can go, and then get back to the wall again. Try and do that as slow as possible. So you're coming down and going back. Next, let's turn it around and go all the way down, but chest to wall, and then land on our feet. So again, further away from the wall with externally rotated hands. I slide forwards till the toes come off, and then bend the knees and just bring the feet down towards the floor. Now that one's a big step up in terms of strength and control, but if you have it and you have a tuck planche, we can then walk down the wall to our tuck planche. So same idea, walk forwards, protract, push up, step in to your toe planche position and hold. A little bit harder to talk. And then if you can do it against the wall, exactly the same. Start in the freestanding handstand, knees towards the chest, come down, find your tuck planche position. Now, with the tuck planche position, we don't actually need to take the shoulders that far to counterbalance the hips. So let's now see what happens when we start to extend the body further away and actually come down towards the floor. I'm not going to worry too much about holding the planche because my planche isn't fantastically strong, but I am going to be able to demo coming down, shoulders forwards to counterbalance hips and feet backwards. Might not just be able to hold in a full planche position. I'm going to do it on the floor and then I'm going to do it on the bars as well. Let's do a tuck planche on the bars just so I can warm up the balance on these, because they do feel a little bit different when you use P-bars, so you just sort of have to calibrate. So there, forwards, knees towards the chest, push up into protraction, round the upper back, and hold there. And I'm going to move fully away from the wall now because we can just start to open out a little bit further. I'm not using the wall to assist in any way. Let's try more of an open tuck position now. So tight tuck is what we have been doing, open tuck or advanced tuck position, flat back it's also called. It's called flat back because when we take the knees from this tight tuck position, we're rounded in the spine. Once you get to this point, we have 90 degree at the hip, knee in line there, whether it's that or that, you'll find that your back is more or less flat on the floor. So you have more of that position when you hold it. So let's look at the shoulder position when we lower to the advanced tuck. So lock it in first, come forwards, down, put it down on the floor. Can't tell exactly where the knees were, but they were more or less there. Do the same thing with the bars, just have a rest for 2 secs. Now, if you would like more help with your training, I've got my different courses and my app. Links are down in the description. I've got hand balance, handstand push-up and press. About to release the ring course. Links are all down below, or you can take a picture of any of these QR codes. And if you want to be kept up to date, I've got my new weekly newsletter as well. Okay, let's try the advanced tuck on the bars. 90 degrees, push around the back. Hold. I said I wasn't going to hold, didn't I? Okay, come back down. Next, let's try and open the legs a little bit further away. So more like a froggy position. So froggy just means it's not straddle and it's not tuck. So if tuck is there, advanced tuck, and straddle is there. So open hip straddle, closed hip straddle, frog is somewhere in between. You just got to think, the more you take that way in terms of limbs, the more you have to plunge, the more we have to move the shoulders away, and that's what we're looking at today. So the froggy position is like slightly easier than straddle. Oh, let's go floor first. Again, let's have a look how far the shoulders go out. Froggy position. Less talking now. Okay, on the bars. Okay, next we'll go straddle. Now the big difference with the straddle is whether you go that open or closed hip that I was talking about. Open hip, there, very, very hard. Closed hip, much easier. The risk with the open hip is we keep the butt up in the air for too long, and then it becomes, is it easier than the frog position? But most people find that a frog position to an open hip straddle like this is way too hard. Going from that to that creates a lot of weight in that direction that's hard to counterbalance, or too big of a jump. So having some movement in between, somewhere where the legs is a little bit easier. So I'm going to try and open the straddle as much as I can, but it is going to be down to how strong I am in the planche, and that's going to be the major limiting factor. But let's see what happens. First floor. Whoop. Let's see if I can hold a handstand first. Straddle. Okay, so it wasn't too bad coming down. I think the hip came up a little bit and sped up a little bit. There was no hold in that position, but I should do a little bit better on the P-bars, but let's see. Yeah, a little bit slower maybe. Okay, now I'm going to attempt something that's beyond my ability. So I'm going to keep in a straight body position. So what would be seen as like a full planche position. Straight body, take shoulders as far forward as I can. Try and stay protracted. But in reality, when we're pushing our limits of our planche positions, we are going to dip a little bit in the scapula. You do see some people that can hold still very good rounded protracted position, but they also tend to walk around like this. But I'm definitely not at the level where I can hold a full planche. But let's see how close I can get to it just by lowering slowly. First on the floor. Yeah, speedy up. Okay, nowhere near on that. Let's see what happens with the bars. Oh, no, it's just not going to happen. I'm obviously not strong enough or conditioned enough in that full planche position. Now, I'm not personally training towards this skill in terms of being able to go all the way down to a full planche in a handstand. It is very cool, but it's very specific. But what I highly recommend that you're doing, and what I still do all the time, is make sure that I can handle a handstand here and move between it, meaning that I can press, I can do handstand push-ups because that shoulder position allows it. The cap doesn't, but the shoulder position does. And it means that my consistency, my catch, my room for error in the handstand is very, very good. So highly recommend you're working the toe pulls, you're working the underbalance positioning, and that you're going up and down to handstand, not over. Let me know where you're at down in the comments. If you are after help with your training, check out my links down in the description, or check out my website, www.paultwyman.com.au. Fantastic, you achieved your first 10-second freestanding handstand. Enjoy it, celebrate it. Not many people get that far. But what are the next steps? How do you take a 10-second freestyle handstand and turn it into a 60-second handstand that you can hold consistently on a good day and on a bad day? The first thing we need to do is do some checks to see exactly what we have available. What tools do you have? Was that 10-second hold a one-off? Or if you tried 10 times, would you be able to hold it 5 of those for 10 seconds? How much room do we have for error? So let's check the 3 most important things when it comes to handstands and see if you can do those okay. Number 1, the kick up. I'm going to kick up to the wall, but watch what I do. I'm going to kick up to a handstand and slowly go to the wall. Now that's the ideal thing. I'm teaching myself to go up on top of the base, not go to the wall. So do 5 repetitions, see how much control you have, go into handstand and then go into the wall. How hard do you hit the wall? Do you keep coming down towards underbalance? And if you can't do it, see if you can kick up lightly to the wall where both heels touch the wall at the same time. So instead of catching in the handstand, you kick up and both heels touch like so. Then I come down, can I do that consistently? If you can't do that, you're going to be more like this where you go 1, 2. So straight away, if that's the case, we're highlighting we need to work on that kick up. We need to work on that base, making sure that the hands, the focal point, the shoulder position is the same 100% of your kick ups, unless you intentionally change something. Next, we need to check what's the window of balance like. How much control do you have in the handstand, meaning how much room for error do you have? So when I do a kick up, I could kick up like this and I'm holding. I could kick up like this and I'm holding. I could kick up over here, and notice, look, I'm catching every time, meaning that I've got so much ability to move around in the handstand. My balance window is very big. And the easiest way to test that balance window is use the overbalance and the underbalance drills. So kick up to the wall, make sure you do that nice kick up again. Then I'm going to see if I can pull off the wall, keeping the legs together with control to a 10-second hold there. Now, if I can't do that every time, I need to practice shorter holds, pulling off like so, not kicking off the wall, until I can do this for reps and for time. That's going to increase your ability to catch anything that goes a little bit towards overbalance and back towards the handstand. And then we have the other side of the handstand window. This is the underbalance. Now the underbalance here, so from the handstand to there would be underbalance, being able to control the down there and the up very slowly is normally the thing that will take people to a 30, 60, 90 second consistent handstand and is most people's biggest gap when it comes to their handstand training. So this will be a very interesting one to test. So we need to go chest to wall, legs together again in that position, like so, and then watch the shoulders come forwards, toes slide down the wall till they float, and then ideally I'd be able to hold here for that magic 5 to 10 seconds, come back with control. If I can't do that, I need to be able to do repetitions there and back and short holds until I can do those longer holds with control, making sure I always return back to the wall. So already we've probably identified some things that you need to work on to increase those hold times and the consistency of the catches. We have the overbalance, the underbalance, increasing that balance window, consistency of the kick up. And then when you're hitting 10+ second handstands, you need to also be looking at entries and shapes. So the 2 main entries that I'd be looking at is your kick up. We've covered the kick up already. The other one is the jump. Exactly the same set up in terms of the base, hands, shoulders, focal point. So whether I'm going to do a kick to handstand or a jump up to handstand, the base is exactly the same. The hands, the shoulders, the focal point. I want that consistent all the time. And then I'm going to jump the hip on top of the shoulders, feet on top of the hips, and push up to handstand. So ideally, I'd be able to jump up and kick up whenever I want to. And I'd highly recommend you practice those. Now you can do tuck jumps, straddle jumps, pike jumps, kneeling jumps, elevated jumps. Lots of fun to be had with the entries. Just train some variation to give you more tools to increase your room for error. And then if we want to reach that next level when it comes to handstand balance, we really need to be focusing on your straddle and your tuck. Straight is number 1, but tuck and straddle are a close second when it comes to shapes. So being able to hold this position, being able to hold this position,
and go between straight, straddle, and tuck with control and consistency is going to make you have so much room for error when it comes for positioning of the shoulder and the hip and the movement of the legs. Now, an occasional 10-second freestanding hold probably means that you're going to need to work those initially on the wall, which is very powerful for learning the positioning of the hip. So notice the hip's gone backwards now, my butt's touching the wall lightly, but my head and shoulders don't touch the wall. And then when I return back to my straight, the heels touch. So notice that. It's exactly the same in that tuck position. Butt touching, heels touching. Butt touching, heels touching.
And then also, as an addition to your hand balance training, I highly recommend that you're working your handstand push-up variations and your press handstand variations.
Even if they're not on your goal list, I'd be doing something towards them. Mobility-wise and strength-wise, again, is going to give you more options in the handstand when it comes to balance. But the more you continue down the handstand balance journey, the more than likely you're going to want to unlock the press or the handstand push-up in the future. So building that foundation now is very useful.
So the journey will be much shorter when you choose to do so. But if you look at the underbalance control I have in the handstand here to help me with my balance, it's also the foundation for the press and for the handstand push-up and other movements like planche or coming down to a crow or frog position like so. So it's definitely one to add in. So if you do enough balance work, add in the handstand push-ups, add in the press work, the side effect will be 90-second freestanding handstand. And you also have all the foundations if you want to work towards something crazy like a one-arm handstand that needs that flexibility, strength, and conditioning that you get from all those other movements. If you're interested in taking your handstand to another level, I have all my new courses, handstand push-up, handstand balance, and handstand press. Links all down in the description. And I currently still have the 50% intro offer running. Now, if you stand on your feet, you wouldn't stand like this for any amount of time or intentionally stand in that position. But when we're learning to handstand, this is the most common issue when thinking about the position that you need to go to or thinking about the position that you should be kicking or jumping to. As a handstand coach, I often get asked, how do I make my fingers stronger so I can hold myself in this position, this overbalanced position here, and recover and bring myself back to handstand? The answer is you can't. Well, maybe a little bit. You can make this a little bit stronger and you can condition it. But basically, we don't want to be going there on our handstand holds, or we don't want to be entering that position when we kick or jump to handstand. One of the reasons we do it is it's a cleaner handstand line if we open the shoulders. What does opening the shoulders mean? So most people's handstand will look something like this. So they want to improve their handstand line, so they think about doing this. See what I done there is I went from this strong position to this weak, unbalanced position, and I took the shoulders this way, meaning the hips and feet went over me and I fell to overbalance. When in fact, the person that's trying to improve their handstand line should really just think about pushing the floor away and reaching tall with the toes into a straighter position. But notice how the shoulders and the focal point can still be seen. I haven't taken the shoulders away like this, and I haven't stuck the hips over. And then if you just imagine when you add the kick up or the jump momentum going in this direction, or even worse, this direction, it's just going to magnify the effect. So then when I come up, shoulders open and I fall over towards overbalance all the time. So let's look at this. So if my hands and shoulders are there in that position, what we're better off doing is bringing our hips and feet slightly behind ourselves and be more in this position. If we take the hips and the feet over in this position, we're going to be going that way. Now, you'll think about it and you go, okay, if I put my hips and my feet there, I'm going to fall this way. But not if we take the shoulders slightly forwards, and you can't do that with this stick. But we can do it, and we do it, with our knees. So I do this. Look, I've sat the knees in front, which allows me to sit my hips backwards. And this is where we move up and down in our standing position, exactly the same in our handstand. Watch the shoulders, the focal point are forwards. My hips and feet are backwards slightly. To see that position. So now if I'm kicking to that position, hips and feet more
at the heel of the palms or slightly behind instead of over the top, I'm going to get way more consistency and control. And this position is slightly underbalanced, and that's where the underbalance drills come in and are magical when it comes to balancing and creating a really strong platform to kick up to jump up to, and also to act as a platform when we're working on things like press, handstand, and for things like handstand push-ups. So my head and shoulders come forwards, hips and feet come backwards, and then at the top, see, I go back to this position, not to this position where I'm going to fall out. So don't think about opening the shoulders this way. Think about lifting up, keeping the hips and feet behind for 99% of your handstands. Now, something a lot of people struggle with is the jump to handstand. And it's a really good way of focusing on what we're talking about here. So I'm going to place my hands down here. I'm going to have my feet behind me like I'm going to do a jump. Now, what I don't want to do is go backwards and jump forwards in that direction. I want to just jump up, keeping the shoulders on top of the hands, looking down to a focal point that stays the same. So glue that in, and then just jump the hips up here and back down. See the shoulders focal point don't move. Same again. And then look, if I go all the way up, take the feet over slightly, so it creates this like banana position. Now I can lift up to there. That's going to give you a much stronger, more consistent catch and much more controlled repetitions when you're working towards it. Exactly the same when I do the kick up. I have that focal point, that hand position, the shoulder position stays exactly the same. And I'm going to kick slightly behind. Slightly behind. And then I just go a little bit further. I can catch there because I've created this strong base, and the hips and the feet never go up and over, and the shoulders don't go underneath me like this. So most people will try and put their shoulders underneath their hips and their legs, or their hips and their legs over at the same time as bringing their shoulders under. So they end up roly-poly in. And you can practice that same thing against the wall, whether it's the jumps going here, and if you do go over, see, I've put my feet on the wall, but I haven't taken my shoulders this way, and I haven't taken my hips and my legs this way. So I'm keeping there, and then I can keep practicing that. And look, I'm going to start to catch a bit more here, and then if it is a bit ugly, I can then start to improve that position without doing this. When you're practicing things like chest to wall handstands, holds, conditioning positions, try and do that same thing. Try and keep the shoulders in front very slightly, so you're more in this hollow position instead of this position, and even worse, hips out in that position, because you're going to end up going over. Think about reaching up to create a better line, not taking the shoulders in. And then the number one handstand balance drill to get you that freestanding hold to 20 to 30 to 60 seconds is the toe pull, that chest to wall position. So here, lock that in, shoulders come forwards, hips and feet slide down the wall. The hips never go up like this because that's going to take me over. See, the shoulders control the position. And I just pause there when my toes are very light on the wall or just off. And if I push up to handstand, I push like this. I don't push like this. And I'd highly recommend you become an expert at that exercise. Now that's a lot to take in and a lot to think about, but just focus on those 2 to 3 drills that really fit your current level. Think about making that strong base that you're using to kick up on top of, and maintain it all the time and make that the controller of your handstand. And if you do need more help with your handstand balance work, check out my handstand course that currently has 50% off. Links are all down below. Today, let's use a little bit more strength to rebalance the handstand. So I'm going to have the hands very far away from the wall. I'm going to take the shoulders away, which pulls the feet off. Then I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Feet come down, shoulders come forwards and pull back. So notice I'm moving between overbalance and underbalance by moving the shoulders dramatically or in a big range of motion. Now this is challenging, but you can start to work on both of these elements with your standard back to wall, chest to wall drills, and progressively making them a little bit more strength orientated. So if we look at how we normally teach and rebalance a handstand, is we kick up very close to the wall here, we squeeze everything together, make the body nice and tall, push through the fingers until my heels come off the wall, like so. And that starts to balance the overbalance. What happens when I go too far that way and brings me back to handstand? I actually went too far then. I went past handstand. The
It brought me all the way down to my feet. Ideally, what will happen if we're training that is we do reps of pulling on and off, like so. And then we go to holds, just slightly over, so weights in the fingers still. So I understand build conditioning in the overbalance. Then we do exactly the same. We turn the body around this way. We go chest to wall. Then we take the shoulders forwards, which now takes the toes light on the wall until I come off. Then I lift up to my handstand and go back. Again, initially we would do repetitions, just learning to pull from the wall, and then eventually holds in that slight underbalanced position there for time. And then when we put those two together, we create a nice controlled handstand that doesn't move that much freestanding. So it would look like this. We just kick up here, we're balanced in the middle, and there might be some subtle little rebalances, which is great. And it makes a nice, efficient, clean handstand, and it's the way most people should learn the handstand. But think of that as like doing higher repetitions of an exercise, where the movement I showed at the start was more like your 1 rep max. What happens if we go to extremes of the movement, which makes us have a really big balance window, meaning that I can kick up here, and I can also go right over this way, the wall's in the way, like so, and go between them. What that means is I got the ability to catch in a lot more positions. So my consistency is there. It means if I kick up like halfway, so like this, and don't quite make it, I can still balance the handstand. I can still get into funky positions like so, but I'm not falling out of the handstand. So it basically gives you a lot more options. Great if you're working towards handstand push-ups, presses, crow handstand, handstand planche, all the add-ons to the standard handstand balance. So if you want to start working towards the extremes, all we're going to do is start to move the hands a little bit further away from the wall. Oh, and if you are interested in learning your first freestanding handstand, get you up to 10 seconds and beyond, actually in my new course, the drills are going to take you all the way to a 1-arm handstand. So it's actually setting you up for weeks, months, if not years of training. Take a picture of this QR code or check out the description down below and you'll find all the details on my new handstand balance course. And because it is new, I'm offering 50% off at the moment. So this is probably easier if you use a marker. Just go where you normally do for your pulls from the wall. Go into position, check you can pull from the wall to handstand or even past handstand like so. And then all I'm going to do is move this a little bit further away, move my hand a little bit further away. Now we need to make sure here that we're not doing this and I'm not pushing off the wall. Notice what happens, my shoulders come away from the wall. So this is also a great mobility exercise. You can do this type of thing and hold in this position as long as you feel strong. You don't want to feel like you're collapsing or feeling strain in the neck or the low back. It should feel like you're feeling it in the upper back and shoulders as you come out, and you're doing it in a position of strength, not collapsing. So there. And then you should feel the point where your heels become light on the wall and then they come off. Ideally, you'd be able to show control at handstand and then go back again and then come back down. Same thing. And then just keep going. Obviously, if you can't make it off, make smaller increments away from the wall, but you can just really keep going with this. Let's see what happens if I go all the way here. And now toes are coming off instead of heels, but I can just get up and get into handstand there like so. So that's probably around my max. And then nice and simple, what I'm going to do is turn around, do exactly the same thing, but now using the shoulders. So use the marker as usual, like so. And then shoulders off till the toes come there, pull the handstand, and then go back again. Now, this might happen. You might go a little bit too far, but because you have started to increase that range, look, I can pull back using the shoulders now back to the wall again. So if I know where my limits are on either side, when I'm doing this drill, I can use it to actually catch and pull back again. So if you are more advanced, if you have more control, you can actually do this drill with one direction. So only back to wall or only chest to wall and train both sides. Because what will happen is you'll do it here, I'll pull from the wall this way, and then I can just push the limits this way as far as I can, and then back again. And the cool thing is you can make it very specific to you.
So you can be working very close to the wall and you can slowly work away if you're stronger. Some people are more confident and can do better reps in a chest wall position. So they might prefer to set up either chest wall or back to wall. Depends if you're thinking about filling the gaps or being confident in your strengths. Well, I think most people would feel safer doing it this way around, back to wall, meaning that they're not going to feel like they're going to backsplat when they do it chest to wall. So then once you've pushed your limits on both sides, you could play with the same thing if you have it freestanding. So I just kick up to handstand first, and then I'm going to go as far as I can this way. There, look, oh, I got to the wall. And then I can go as far as I can this way, show control, and then pull back to my handstand. Now that's very advanced, but if you have the ability to do it, awesome, have a play with it, or know where the progressions are going to go. Now I'd still highly recommend that you work on the standard ones, especially if you're working towards that first 10 seconds, or even if you're working up towards your 30 or 60 second holds, that still needs to be your bread and butter. Back to wall pulls, chest to wall pulls, freestanding holds. And if you do need a little bit more help, if you'd like more of a structured programs to follow, check out my course, links are all down in the description. Now, when training towards a skill like a freestanding handstand, it's a bit complicated to know when you're ready for the next level in terms of the drills, the progressions. Everyone is going to start on a slightly different progression to start with. You might be already trying to kick up to a freestanding handstand, or you might just slowly be conditioning your hands and shoulders in the middle of the room, feet on the couch or up, starting to go towards chest to wall positions. And then we'd normally progress to doing kick-ups to the wall. We'd learn to pull on and off the wall, all still while maintaining and improving our conditioning holds, building up until we can hold for 30 to 60 seconds against the wall. Then we'll be starting to increase and understand our window of balance, how we control the overbalance and the underbalance. Then we'd tend to move away from the wall initially for some standard kick-up attempts to a straightish handstand. Then we would slowly add in shapes. At that point, we'll probably also start to include some strength work towards some skills like press handstands or handstand push-ups. Again, normally that would be the lower levels of that, like the pike push-ups, wall eccentrics. So we would have started to build a handstand program or practice that's much more evolved. And then we might keep taking that all the way to some extreme skills like a one-arm handstand. But along that journey, even if you have a very good program, how do you know when you're ready to take that next step, that next progression? And remember, it's not just handstand balance we're talking about, it's the mobility as well. The mobility is going to affect your ability to get in and out of some of these positions and is going to affect the drills that you use. So it's super important to know regressions and progressions of the actual skill. So if you're having an off day, you can back off and still do the reps, but you just make things easier. That could be taking a freestanding movement like a straddle handstand and doing it up against the wall. But the day where your balance is really good, we can embrace it and even go to harder levels that might be something like transitions in and out of the straddle position. So having an understanding of the progression line is super important. So when do we know when to take it up to that next level or that next progression towards the skill? So if you're following a program or a routine, if you can do it 80 to 100% of the time, you're probably ready to start playing with some of those next progressions or next drills. So if you're doing something like a freestanding handstand and you can kick up 8 out of 10 times, show control and catch and come back down again, and then your hold times are 30 seconds plus, we can probably start to add in different shapes. Now, I just entered the shape via a straight position, so I've gone into a straddle from a straight, so I'd learn how to hold this straddle position. Ideally, when I'm doing this, I'm going to return back to my straight before I come back out. But I'm still just doing static holds. So a static hold in the straddle position, but the goal is to enter it from the straight position. And that could be a progression from just the standard straight holds. And I would do that with both the straddle position and the tuck. So exactly the same. I kick up to my handstand, show control, and then come down to my tuck position, hold for time, and then return back to my straight position. Now already, that's probably going to be too hard for a lot of people if they haven't been doing any straddle or tuck work. So we need to do an easier regression. So while I was working on those straight freestanding holds to get that 80% consistency of kick-ups and increasing those freestanding holds, I should also have been working on my straddle and tuck positions against the wall. So again, I'm starting in the straight position. I'm going to open to my straddle, light butt touch in that position, hold, and then return with a little butt bounce back to the open hip straight position. So I'm using the wall as assistance to make sure that I'm building the ability to understand the straddle position. I could do the same for the tuck. And I'm starting and finishing in that straight position, which is going to get me ready to do this freestanding version. And just like starting to work the straddle and tuck up against the wall while we're also working on the freestanding holds, our practice should also be including the mobility work to get us ready for those next stages. So doing our straddle movements, our forward folds, our hanging, and all the movements that are going to help us towards our handstand skills are being slowly conditioned and increased from those earlier stages of our handstand practice. So when we need to have the mobility to do the advanced skills, we have it ready to go. Now with the strength skills like handstand push-ups and press handstands, it's a little bit easier to do the repetitions. And I recently made a video on the 5 rep rule. So if you can do 5 reps really nicely, you're ready to start playing with that next progression, but you might not be ready to use it in a working set. So if I take something like a pike push-up and I can bang out repetitions here, 5 to 10, then I know that I can up it and make it harder. Can I get 5 reps at that next progression? If I can start to do the next one. But if the next one, I can only get 1 terrible rep out, then I know I'm not ready to do that for my main working sets. But I'm starting to play and understand the next progressions. The same with the press handstand. If I have eccentric presses in my program and I'm coming down slowly, but when I get to this point, I fall out of the movement, that's not going to count as a full range of motion, good repetition. So I need to take it over to the wall and do a good eccentric repetition that goes all the way down to the floor. But I know that next progression for when I'm ready or when I'm having one of those good days. So having good programs is fantastic and having the exercises laid out in front of you, but you need to make sure that you're working the correct progressions for your current level. And that level does change day to day. So you need to know that progression line, what are the next exercises and what are the exercises that are slightly easier, so you can keep moving back and forth as you increase down that pathway towards your final goal. If you need more help with the programming side, I have my new courses. The handstand balance one is going to take you from the wall drills all the way through to a one-arm handstand. The handstand push-up one is going to take you from a pike push-up all the way through to a freestanding handstand push-up and then a 90-degree handstand push-up. The same for the press handstand course, from those initial floor and wall drills all the way to a freestanding press handstand and then a stool to press. If you're interested, take a picture of the QR codes, or the details are down below in the description. Now this video is going to cover 2 types of people. Number 1, you're ready to start to do one-arm handstand work. You've got a great 2-arm handstand and you can start adding on those one-arm handstand progressions in a freestanding space. And number 2, you're not quite ready to start working the one-arm handstand, but you still want to have a play with the exercises. And we're going to try and mimic the correct technique, but use on the wall. We're going to go through the same principles, the same drills, one against the wall, one freestanding. So let's jump in with the foundation. We're just going to go into a standard handstand, but we're going to go into a straddle position. Now, ideally with the straddle, notice I'm pushing my elbows in. I'm not got them out like that. If we're going to stack on a one-arm handstand, it's super important that we're pushing up nice and tall and our elbows are trying to come inwards towards the midline. If not, when we try and go on top of them, if the elbows are sticking out like this, we're going to move in a lateral direction and we're going to start to collapse. We can't collapse in that position. We want to have a super strong foundation. So straddle handstand, if you can do it freestanding, awesome. Hold there for around 20 to 30 seconds. Just get comfortable in that position. Video yourself from the side and look at what you're dealing with. What currently can you get into in terms of the width? How wide is your straddle? What do your elbows, arms look like? How much push do you have? Now, if you can't do it freestanding, we'll do it up against the wall. So exactly the same, but now I'm going to go chest to wall, toes touching. I'm still looking down towards the floor, tippy toes touching. Try and get those elbows in, lock the knees, point the toes. Light toe assist. Hold again, 20, 30 seconds. Video from the back, see what's happening. And then in between the sets, in between the drills, we're just going to go into a straddle position. So like this, you don't have to have hands on the hips. You can either do that or cross the arms, like Van Damme style. Just try and keep an open hip to start with.
So in that position, I'm trying to keep my feet as flat as I can on the floor. Open hip. This is closed hip, leaning forwards. I'm trying to open the hip as much as possible. Even try and keep the tail tucked under a little bit. Don't want to have too much anterior tilt too early. We're going to use that later on. Okay, so now we've got the straddle handstand. We need to layer on top the flag type movement. So a flag is when we drop one leg and lift the other leg. And I go over to the other side, do the same thing. Now don't push this one too much to start with, just have a little play. So the floor version, elbows in, tight straddle position, then I'm going to come down a little bit over to the other side. Now the movement to start with might be tiny, so like this, but what we don't want is this. So now I've lost my straddle, I'm doing different things with my legs. You want to have that connection, just flag a little bit side to side like so. Also try and maintain elbows in. The temptation now is compensate for lack of movement side to side with the legs with movement in the shoulders and elbows. So as best you can, elbows in towards the midline even when you're coming down. It's a little bit like if I do this, I'm pushing the knee in. What I don't want to do is bend the knee this way because I'm going to collapse this way. Can't do it freestanding, up against the wall. Set that home position first, that straddle, light toes, and then I'm just going to try and come down, elbow in, same thing. There. Now I actually find this so much harder against the wall than freestanding, but when I went through the stepping stones towards the one-arm handstand, I never used the wall. And when I'm coaching people towards a one-arm handstand, I actually prefer not to use the wall. However, if you want to increase time in the position, you're struggling to do it freestanding, the wall can be your friend. We just don't want to get carried away and use it all the time. Now we're going to rest again. Same thing with the straddle. This time I'm going to drop the hip backwards, close the hip, and then hands on the floor. And now I can get much wider in the straddle position. Just hold there for a few seconds. So this is closed hip straddle stretching. It's a little bit different than middle split stretching when I'm trying to keep everything stacked. So you'll notice I've dropped the hip back a little bit. Next, we're going to go into 5 to 10 second holds in the flagged position up onto fingertips. Now this is where we step up quite a bit in terms of the challenge. And a lot of you who have been doing the freestanding up to this point might now need a little bit of wall assist to get any quality time in the position. But let's see how we go. So freestanding, straddle, elbows in, flag, look at the hand. Then I'm going to see if I can get up onto fingertips. Now notice when I've gone up onto fingertips there, I've bent the elbow. I haven't done this with my shoulder. I haven't hiked the shoulder up higher. So now this shoulder is higher than this one. We want to keep the shoulders as best we can at the same height, and that's by bending the elbow. Now we've probably jumped up 2 or 3 steps here. You could just hold in the straddle position by itself. You could hold in the straddle position by itself plus look at the hand. Now my right arm, in terms of the one-arm handstand, is way stronger than my left. So let me show you an easier version on this left side. So here, look at the hand, flag across and hold in that position. So I'm trying to get a little bit of weight out of this right hand, but I'm not going all the way up on to fingertips like I did on the other side. I'm just going to keep like there, hold and come back down again. So if you don't feel ready to go up onto fingertips, that's one option. Another option is to hold onto a block. It can be a yoga block or a handstand block like this, and then kick into the position. Look at the hand, come over and be in that position there. So this is actually mimicking this. Look, it's the same thing. It's raising that hand up. It's getting me used to being bent in one elbow, trying to maintain that shoulder position. Same options when we do it up against the wall. Think it's layering. So you got to do your first layers, your straddle, your flag, looking at the hand, see if you can get up onto fingertips, keeping the elbow in towards the midline, and then back. Now I can feel that my position when I do it up against the wall tends to do this. So their legs go in this direction instead of this direction. And it's going to happen to everyone when they're learning the one-arm handstand. It's going to turn into a lateral movement, which eventually takes you over here and stumbles or makes you fall out of position. So constantly try and fight that. Think down, this leg comes closer to this arm or the torso, not further away. And you'll hear me say this a lot, video yourself, check the video constantly in between your reps, in between your sets. Okay, next mobility exercise, Now we do closed hip, straddle to open hip, split position, hands on the hips, cross the arms in that position, and then just see I can get much deeper here, but when I try and go up, it's going to be really hard to open the hip in that position. You can hold on to something as well when you're playing with this. Okay, next progression was we got up onto fingertips. Now we need to talk about starting to release fingers. Now the hardest one to get rid of is probably the thumb, but it's probably the most important to start to get rid of first. Because what we want to be thinking about is when we're going up on to less fingers, we're decreasing the amount of weight in this hand. What we don't want to do is have the same weight there and be buckling in the fingers, and then when I lift the thumb up, my fingers are doing this. What ideally is happening is this is becoming lighter and lighter. I'm getting more on top of having the focal point looking down this side, the elbow standing, all of my weight's on top of this hand, and this one's just supporting me a little bit. And you can play with that in a push-up position, elbow in, look at the hand, shift across, I'm on top of here. This can now go to here, 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 like so. In reality, what's going to happen to start with is there's going to be a lot of moving around. This elbow is going to be doing lots of things. The weight in here is going to change. There's going to be way too much, but that's just part of the process. Once you've done 10,000 reps, you'll probably be fine. But that 10,000 reps is the rite of passage to earn your one-arm handstand. So just think we want to decrease the weight, decrease the fingers. Ideally, we want to be getting down to one finger on this side. So think you could spend 6 months going all through the fingers until you get to one finger, and that's after you've already worked up to fingertips. So it's going to take a lot of time, and that's regular practice. The one-arm handstand doesn't come for free. It needs a lot of reps, a lot of sets over a lot of weeks and months, if not years. But let's jump to that next progression, see if we can get to less fingies. So there, look across, flag, bend the elbow, fingertips, one finger, hold in that position. Same thing on the other side, fingertips, finger, fingy, I can't get it, there. Okay, show control, ideally, back to two arms. Now that is going to be tricky. So most of you, to experience that, are going to need a lot of support against the wall, especially if you haven't done enough reps and sets yet of those earlier exercises. There's nothing wrong with playing ahead of your current level. Just be realistic with your training sets and do the stuff where you can hold for 5 to 10 seconds for 5 to 10 sets, and then play with the progressions that are a little bit too hard for you. So I'm actually worried about doing this on the wall. I'm not a big fan of using it. Let's go here. So I can tell I've lost my straddle. Elbow in, fingertip. Yeah, I struggle with that. But have a play, see how you go against the wall. But I believe the real work is done freestanding. Now we will also see some people take their hands out to the side when they go up onto fingertips. So you'll see this type of thing. So here, 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 there. Now I can get to one finger over here. The downside of taking the hand away is actually the positive is that the shoulders stay on the same height, because now I don't have to lift up to deal with this arm. I can go out to the side and then I'm here. But the downside of doing that is what you've done now is you've increased your base of support in terms of the length, which makes you come more into the middle there, where we actually want to be here. So this can feel like it's progression, and it can work, but we just need to make sure that this hand has very little weight in it, and we're not doing this and going between the 2 points, because now they're a bigger distance apart. But it would look like this if you was to do the arm out to the side. So here, and then there, like that. Now remember, we are skipping through these progressions really fast. The next one is a big jump. It's going to lift the hand up. Now there's different variations of lifting the hand up. We can go up for a couple of seconds, come back down again. We can have one on one finger, take the finger away like that. And we can lift the hand up there. We can lift the hand up there. We can put the arm all the way up and hold the leg. Now they're big jumps in progressions, but this is a quick fun tutorial, so we're skipping ahead big time. So let's just see if we can lift the arm now. Now remember, when you lift the arm, we don't want to hike the shoulder. So ideally we want to do this. Notice this shoulder isn't moving, but if I don't want to do is this. As I bring this arm, especially when I'm bringing it up quick, we'll tend to do this with the shoulder. You'll rotate out, you'll fall over to that side, but it's going to look a little something like this. So here, fingertip, lift up here,
Ooh. You can see I'm a little bit off in terms of my practice with the one arm, and that's a big thing. To maintain the one arm handstand needs a lot of practice as well. I'm barely training the one arm at the moment. I'm doing my two arm handstands on a daily basis, especially through coaching, but I do a lot less one arms. So it's not available, especially when I'm coaching, talking, trying to show different levels. It's much harder to get those positions. Okay, but let's see if I can show you a better one arm for me. Straddle, hand, flag, fingertips, fingertip, hand up. Yeah, it's not amazing. Disappointed, that's the trouble. Because I got to a place where my one arm handstand was really good. Now when I try and do it, even though I can hold 5-10 seconds, it doesn't feel as good as it used to. But that's my own fault for not training as much. But let's have a go on the wall now, see if I can make it look okay here. Again, not a fan of using the wall for my personal practice because it feels horrible. It feels like my position is out there. Ooh, there. But have a play with the wall variation. I'll be really interested to know how the wall feels to you compared to the freestanding version. Let me know down in the comments. Obviously, that was a super fast video running through the progressions, showing you some wall options. Highly recommend that you work that correct progressions for your current level. And if you're not sure what they are or you need help with your training, you can check out my handstand balance course. It takes you all the way from beginner all the way through to a one-arm handstand, multiple programs, lots of demo videos and tutorials. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I'll speak to you guys in the next one.